Good day, everybody. Hope you are all doing well and this finds you well. Today, welcome back to the OC Real Estate Podcast. Again, your host, Hunter Renner. I am blessed with the presence of my dad and broker, Pablo Renner. How you doing, Dad?
I told him he had to call me dad.
Yeah, he's been getting mad at me for saying Pablo, so we've changed it up. So today's episode, we are going to discuss what the state of the market is.
Yeah,
And before we get into it, I'd like to give a disclaimer. Just keep in mind that the market is a broad term for how real estate is selling in a geographic area. If you are not in the Orange County area, these numbers may not apply to you.
right.
And
And,
it's
and even in Orange County, right?
Mhm.
There's the micro markets also. Like Newport Beach is different than
Right.
Irvine or Tustin or Huntington Beach.
Right.
So,
So overall, we are all in the same market as far as buyer, seller on par. However, it's going to vary depending on inventory and what that all looks like for each geographic area.
yeah.
So, Pablo, Dad, what's the state of the Orange County market today?
So I think we're still experiencing a very hot seller's market,
Hmm.
right? It's where a way to say it is last year or earlier this year, we, we were in a hot, right?
Yeah.
Seller's market.
Yeah.
Very technical term. We're seeing it cool down to a hot market. I've been doing this for 22 years, and so I've seen what a buyer's market is, and we're definitely not there.
Okay.
I do see the market having some type of correction because there's so many of the indicators that are telling us, hey, it's time, it's coming up. It's usually cycles last anywhere from 5 to 7 years,
Hmm.
and we've been on an upcycle since 2011. So we're going on 11 years of appreciation. We really haven't had a strong buyer's market in the last 11 years. It's
Okay.
been a strong seller's market. I think what's fed the market over the last year, especially during COVID, I think when they dropped all the interest rates, because what would happen is if you don't drop the interest rates, the market gets stale.
Hmm.
There's no inventory, and I'm sorry, there's no sales, and then the market could really come to a halt. And because of what's going on, people were, I say people, financial people, were doing whatever they could to keep the country from going into a recession and maybe even a depression
Absolutely.
during COVID, right? Because no one
Yeah.
knew what was going to come.
Unprecedented.
Yes, so I think had we not had that, maybe the market would have changed in 2020, 2019. Um, but right now we're definitely experiencing a strong seller's market, a hot seller's market.
Hmm.
I know to some people it feels like we're seeing a shift, and we are, and we're going from maybe having 20 offers on a house to maybe having 5 offers. Which, by the way, there were times that I was selling real estate when we had no offers, right?
Yeah.
So when you look at 5 offers, it's still phenomenal, especially to have multiple offers within the first 30 days, because a true seller's market should last 90 days, right? A house should take 90 days to sell.
Right.
That's what a seller's market normally is. It's created by the amount of inventory that gets absorbed by the market in a period of time. And so between 0 to 3 months, which is 90 days, if the average time to sell a house is less than 90 days, we consider it a seller's market, right? And
Okay.
today it's that number is probably half, if not less.
Yeah.
And there's some houses selling in 8 days, but if you take the whole higher end, lower end and all that, you're probably looking anywhere from 30 to 45 days on average. And so it's still a very strong seller's market. We're starting to see a shift because the interest rates went up over the last, I almost want to say, I'm not sure when we're going to publish this, but here we are on April 15th.
Hmm.
So if you look at maybe late March when interest rates started creeping up and now they're just hovering over 5%.
Wow.
Yeah. And I talked to a client of ours that we had earlier in the year that they bought their house and they got a 2.37 30-year fixed. Right. So it's almost doubled for that particular person. He had a great rate. But for the most part, our clients were getting three
Yeah.
something. Now you're looking at five something, you lose a lot of buying power. And so we've lost a lot of buyers. A lot of buyers that were on the fence who were actually purchasing because it was a great opportunity to get a house with a very low interest rate.
Yeah.
And now they're gone from the market. And so I think as that continues to happen, we're not going to see it's funny, but there was a time, and for most of my career, where there was a list price. The list price was not a suggested starting price. It was the list price. And usually buyers would come in below list price or maybe at list price if they really wanted the property, but a lot of times it was below list price and you're
Hmm.
negotiating back and forth. Now it seems like the list price is a suggested starting price, right?
Yeah.
So whatever the house is listed at, everyone comes in, above that, whether it's 2%, 5%, 10% in some cases. Um, I think we're going to stop seeing so much of that now. So I think the buyers that we have left on the market are paying a little bit more monthly, as opposed to what they were paying, 2, 3 months ago.
Sure.
And so they're going to be conscientious about making these offers, knowing that that interest rate creeping up is going to cut into their pocketbook, their monthly expenses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, kind of, if you don't mind, would you touch on what exactly does it mean for the consumer that we're in such a hot seller's
Okay.
market? If I'm looking to buy a home
Yeah.
and I need to get my home, I'm getting relocated,
Yeah.
what should I be doing?
So first thing is, as a buyer, man, you really got to be on your A game. Okay. Number one is hire a great agent, like somebody here in the renter team.
That'd be a good choice.
Yeah, to help represent you and navigate the waters. One of the things that we're doing is we're all our clients that are not cash. If they're cash, we want proof of it,
Mhm.
right? Not because we don't believe them, but every time we write an offer, we want to make sure that we go to that agent and say, hey, here's our buyer, here's their paperwork, here's their cash, right?
Yeah.
That they really are a cash buyer. If they're not and they're getting financed, then we need to make sure that we get what's called underwriter approval, right? A desktop underwriter. And the reason we do that is there's the pre-qual letter. And I think, one great thing that we could do is I just want to kind of touch on this, but we really should have Lauren in here, right? Lauren can break down what the benefits are of the desktop, the underwriter approval.
And for anyone who's not on the renter team, who's Lauren?
Lauren is our preferred lender. She's with Flagstar, and she does a great job with working with our buyers and getting them approved. Again, approved versus prequal. So prequal is a letter. We see them all the time. Hey,
Yeah.
our client has been pre-qualified for a loan up to $1 million or
Right.
whatever it is, right? But there's no qualifications. In other words, this person just went to a lender and said, hey, here's how much I make. And they're like, oh, what are your monthly payments? Oh, here's what I owe every month. And they're like, oh yeah, based on that, you're pre-approved for a loan,
Okay.
right? Or pre-qualified, I should say. The approval process is different. It's called a conditional approval from the underwriter.
Yeah.
Basically says you're submitting an application, you're submitting your paperwork, they're checking your credit, they're
Mm.
verifying your employment, and they're actually looking at your credit to say, okay, this is how much he or she is paying every month. This is how much they earn every month. And then they look at the debt to income ratio. They make a decision based on what they have to say, hey, based on this, what
Yeah.
we have here today, you're qualified, approved, basically for a loan up to X, and that approval is usually contingent on an appraisal,
Mhm.
which sometimes we're waiving those. And then the other thing that it's contingent on is clean title, and then obviously a contract, right? You've
Yeah.
got to have a contract. The nice thing about that is that's the second best thing next to cash. Cash is great because hey, the money's here.
Yeah.
I don't have to ask anybody for it. It's whenever we're ready to close escrow, we can just wire that money to escrow. Um, with the conditional approval is great because we know that that particular buyer has already spoken with the lender
Mhm.
and the underwriter has reviewed the paperwork and they've requested, like there's a question on credit, they ask it at that point and say, hey, we see that this was late, well we see this, and they clarify that during the approval process versus the escrow process.
Oh, okay.
The reason a lot of times escrows close late is because the lender needed the buyer didn't realize. We've seen this a lot. It's where maybe there's a lien or a child support. That one comes up a lot in people's credit record, that report that's not theirs. But because we normally as individuals aren't pulling our credit report regularly, we
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
And so what happens is you get pre-qualified and lender says, how's your credit? And you're like, oh yeah, my credit's great. And then right when you go into escrow, they actually have to pull the credit and like, whoa, wait a minute, it's not great,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's A, B, and C. So now you have to go take care of it as a consumer, right? And so it's better to get the approval done up front because we can tackle these obstacles
Sure.
before we get into escrow. And so the more that you can do ahead of time, the better you as a buyer become to the seller, to the
Mm,
listing, agent that's selling the house. And so I think that's one thing as a buyer that you can do in today's market, right? You make yourself as strong a buyer as possible so that when the seller has to choose, it's not real hard.
yeah.
The seller's got to look at and he sees paperwork. Okay, what does this guy have? Oh, he's putting 20% down.
Sure.
And the rest of the money he's financing, right? This guy's putting 20% down. The rest of the money he's financing, but the lender's already given us a conditional approval saying that all we need is a purchase contract and a clean title, which every seller should have. And so that becomes a better person to choose to go into escrow with.
Okay.
We just had a deal right now where we were fully approved, and the property was listed. I think it was like 980. We came in at a million. I think it was exactly a million. Somebody came in at 1,040,000. They countered us. We went to our client just could not go to 1,040,000, so they went to 1,020,000. But because all our paperwork was in a row,
Uh-huh.
we actually were able to beat out the other buyer who
Uh,
was willing to give a little more money,
mhm.
but we were kind of the sure thing,
Sure.
right? So as a seller, you're looking, do you want to risk opening escrow with somebody who may not be able to close it just because you're going to get an extra $20,000? In this
Right.
case, there was they were in a time crunch. The seller was.
Okay.
And so we had to waive a bunch of contingencies to get it done, but we agreed to everything but the price. But even at $20,000, that seller felt the paperwork we had was worth the security of that twenty thousand
Yeah.
dollars. So that's as a buyer, that's what you want to do. You want to make yourself as clean as possible
Mhm.
for the seller to choose you versus somebody else. And a lot of times, I shouldn't say a lot of times, but sometimes it's not all about money, right? If you match dollar for dollar, they got to look at something else. Well, what is it?
Right.
It's the strength of the buyer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So from what
Yeah.
I'm hearing, if someone wants to buy a home in today's market, the
Hmm.
best way to write a winning offer is what we use in the business a lot as verbiage is be very cooperative and um, obviously coming in at the highest price
Yeah.
in the pool is going to help, but
Yeah.
it's going to be getting all your ducks in a row and
Hmm.
having all the paperwork. There's no hiccups down the way. And when you talk about waiving contingencies, it's like so with the loans that you kind of talk about, the bank has to send someone to say this house is worth
Yeah.
that
So
loan. So
that's
you have
the
to,
appraisal, right? And we're having to waive appraisals sometimes.
yeah,
And so that's where in working with a great agent, it will tell you, hey, property may not appraise, or man, you know what? We're close enough to where it should be that you should be okay.
yeah,
And if you're not okay, if it appraises at X and the sales price is X plus 10,000, 20,000,
sure,
are you okay paying that extra 20? Or would you prefer not to lose the house,
yeah.
right? Or whatever it is. We have to have that conversation with every seller on every transaction.
So as a buyer, you have to be pretty flexible in today's market in order to get the home
Yes, but
where you
flexible,
want.
or but again, if you're not, because you don't have the money, you don't have the money.
Right.
We need to. Our job is to protect you as a buyer,
Mhm.
right? Our job when representing the buyer is to protect the buyer, to make sure they don't get into a contract that's going to cause them to A, lose the house if something happens,
Yeah.
and B, worst cases, they lose money, right?
Mhm.
Because of what happened. So for one, is you need to work with an agent that's going to structure that contract, right? That the seller looks at and says, "Hey, this is a good contract,
Mhm.
but there's protections built in for the buyer." And
Yeah.
every buyer is different.
Mhm.
Some buyers don't need the appraisal protection. They're like, "I don't care.
Yeah.
I want that house, and if it goes for, if I end up paying, let's say in this case, 1,020, and it only appraises for 1,000, I don't care. I'll pay the extra $20,000."
Right.
But you need to have that conversation with the buyer
Yeah.
before you write the offer, not during escrow.
Not
That's not a
when
conversation to have
a
during
last
escrow.
minute problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So,
we've talked about buyer, buyer, buyer. What are
hmm,
they supposed to do?
yeah,
We've talked about how here's the definition of a seller's market
yeah.
in a brief sentence summary. It's the seller has most of the
So
control in it because there's less
yeah,
inventory.
I guess so. There's three markets. There's a seller's market, the neutral market, and the buyer's market.
Okay.
the way we measure it, and I think that's going to have to change as we go forward, because I don't know that the inventory is ever going to be back up to where it used to be. And I say used to be, in Orange County, inventory ran normally about 9,000 houses for sale. Today we're running at about 1,700.
Wow.
Huge change, right? And it
Yeah.
has changed over the last 4 years. I don't know, with there's no more land to build, there's no more houses to build. I don't know that people are moving as much as they were in the past, where they were
Mhm.
upgrading their house to a bigger house. Nowadays, people are either adding to their house or remodeling, and so we're seeing less inventory. So I think the unit of measure that we've always used is going to have to change
Okay.
coming up. As of right now, it hasn't. So 0 to 3 months is a seller's market, 3 to 6 is a neutral market, and 6 plus is a buyer's market. And we've never seen a 6 plus, and not since, well, maybe in 2005 to seven there
Okay.
was that, for other reasons, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I think the best way to describe it is a seller's market is when the seller holds all the cards. And basically, and these aren't the accurate numbers, but this is just an illustration. So
Uh-huh.
in a seller's market, there's going to be 10 buyers for one house. So these 10 buyers are trying to fight to get that one house. Only
Right.
one of them's going to get it,
Right.
right? So the seller can choose the best of the 10.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's pricing, sometimes it's finances, um, contingencies, rent backs, all kinds of
It's a
stuff.
lot of factors.
Like, we're seeing rent backs like crazy. We've never done, we used to talk about 3 days, right?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you got to move out on the day of the close of escrow, or we negotiate to get the buyer 3 days after the
Mhm.
close of escrow. I mean, now we're talking about 30, 60, 90 days of rent back, because sellers are, if you want my house, I'll sell it to you, but I want to stay here for another 30 or 60 days until this happens in my life where I can
Yeah.
move, right? We never used to see that. That's what the seller's market has done
Sure.
to the market, to the real estate market. When you go to neutral market, so normally you have an equal number of buyers to sellers, and
Yeah.
and
Close to.
nothing. There's no big hurry. The buyer's market is the opposite of the 10 to 1 rule, right? So for every 10 houses for sale, there might be one buyer, and that's an
Mhm.
exaggeration again, right? It's really not that bad, but
Yeah.
that's kind of the difference between a seller's market and a buyer's market, right? Where the seller's market, it's 1 to 10, where a buyer's market is 10 buyers
Mhm.
to, I'm sorry, 10 sellers to the one buyer. So the buyer gets to look and say, well, I'll offer you X. Will you take it? No, you won't. Okay, go to the next house, right? Until
Yeah.
somebody accepts their offer, and everybody's like fighting for buyers. Um, so when back in 2000, and well, at the peak, I think in 2005 or six, I forget what year it was, we had 10 to 12,000 houses for sale. We couldn't sell them.
Right.
Couldn't get financing. Only investors were buying. It was a lot of short sales, a lot of stuff happening. 2009, I think, is probably the worst was over, and then the market started to kind of calm down, and in 2011 we could see that it was coming back up.
Okay.
Um, our most recent peak, and I wrote this down. So the most recent peak that we've had as far as inventory is July of 2019.
Wow.
All right, we had 5,900 houses, which technically would have been I think, a neutral market, or
Mhm.
leaning towards a buyer's market. Okay. Then 5 months later, that dropped to 3,200 in December, which is
Wow.
normal. December, usually people take the home off the market. People normally don't put their home on the market in November, December. So we normally, whatever sells towards the end of the year, it doesn't get replaced by new
Yeah.
listings. So it's normal for it to go down, right?
Mhm.
Which
Just
we,
external factors.
yes,
Yeah.
which we saw it come back up on May 20th. If you remember, March 20th was kind of COVID, the whole thing
Yeah.
started, and people shutting down. But we still had an increase in inventory up until May 20th. So when March happened, April came in, we
The
still
dreaded
had
March.
inventory, and May we had inventory. And it went to 4,200, which was still not a bad market. If I still remember, during COVID, we had decent inventory. We still had people buying houses.
Yeah.
And I think COVID forced more buyers into the market, because now that we're working from home, you could justify, hey,
Spending.
here's my mortgage payment, but I need a bigger house because I need an office. So
Yeah.
therefore, I can justify that, because now I'm not going to the office, or maybe I'm saving money in in driving, right, in
Yeah.
gas, or all that other stuff. So from May to 2020 to December of 2021, we just saw it's just a decrease in
Wow.
inventory. over a period of, God, we're talking about a year and a half. Yeah, year and 7 months, where we didn't see the up and down. We just saw down, 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 down.
Mhm.
And we hit a low of in December of 1,200 houses for sale.
Yeah.
Uh, and I do remember, the stats don't show it, but me personally, I remember checking on January the 1st of this year what the inventory was like, and it was just over 1,000 houses for sale,
Wow.
right? Just that one particular day.
Yeah.
And it started to go up after that. So the average for that month was probably 12, 13, 1,400, whatever it
Sure.
was. But I remember on that specific day, it was like 1,000 houses for sale.
Wow.
Lowest I have ever seen in my life. And today we're sitting, inventory has increased, and we're sitting at 1,700 houses for
Mm.
sale, right? And again, this is single family residences in Orange County,
Yeah.
right? So 1,700. You're like, wow. So we went from 1,000 in January 1st to 1,700. So almost, what is that, 70% increase?
Yeah.
Uh, I it's still not enough because we lost so much inventory from May 20th
Mhm.
for a year and a half. We never saw that cycle go up like last year in June, July, when normally we would have a ton of properties, right? Or the spring, May, June, July, the spring cycle, which we're in right now.
Mhm.
Um, I thought we would get more inventory, and we didn't. So whatever the inventory was at base that normally comes up and then comes down, it never went up, but it did come down towards the end of the year, which brought us down to the 1,000
Yeah.
ish market. And so that, coupled with the interest rates, just increased the price. I mean, houses were selling. You could have bought a house and sold it the next month and made a profit. That's how bad it was.
Wow.
We were involved in a transaction middle last year on 16th, 19th, on 19th Street, and guy had bought it for 1,200,000 and just closed escrow. And they felt, you know what, we don't want the house. We made a mistake. We need to sell it. And it was with a good friend of mine. We spoke, and it was an off market deal. So we went in escrow at 1.4
Mhm.
because 1.4 would cover all his expenses. So the buyer was like, listen, at least I didn't lose money. He was going to make, 10, 20, 30, 40,000, whatever that
Yeah.
number was going to be after paying for his loan that he had gotten, commissions, all that stuff. My buyer decided, they got cold feet and they said, hey, you know what? We don't want to do this. So they backed out. So what they ended up doing is, a couple of months went by, they listed the property for 145 to cover the expenses in case it was negotiated to be done. Ended
Sure.
up selling for 1.6, right?
Wow.
So in a period of 3 months, that property went from, he paid 1.2 to 1.6, so
Mm.
$400,000. It was I want to say it was probably the spring of last year.
Okay.
And that's kind of when we started seeing that market just go insane, when
Mhm.
everybody was, you the first day of showing, it looked like an open house because
Yeah.
every agent was there trying to bring their buyers in, and we're still seeing that. But I do feel like, because I do have my finger on, on the pulse of real estate, I do feel like something is changing.
Yeah.
I do feel a change in the horizon. Not sure what it is yet. And I'm not sure what it's going to look like. But I do feel that we're not going to be seeing all these multiple offers above asking type deals, and I think buyers are not going to be conceding as much to sellers just to try to get a property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought that up. We're in a seller's market. As you said,
Hmm.
that's an incredibly quick turnaround to make 400,000
Yeah.
on the same home. Um, does that mean that sellers should be overpricing their homes because they can?
I suggest not, because I think we're at the cusp of something happening, and I think if you come out too aggressively
Yeah.
marketing your home and you don't get offers, it's possible that you end up sitting. And if this market changes like it did I remember 2005, like it literally happened overnight. We saw the writing on the wall, and then one day, just I think it was New Century Mortgage that went belly up, and then they started not funding their loans, and all of a sudden everyone went crazy,
Right.
and this whole thing opened up. Now again, different situation this year.
Yeah.
I get that it's completely different. We don't have the liar loans, and we don't have the 100% financing. There's a lot of different variables that we don't have, that existed then. But I do see the change in the mood of the
Mm.
buyer, and I do I have talked to a few sellers that are starting to notice it, that have been on the market, that have asked me, "Hey, what do you think?" Not our clients, right? That we've met. I know they
Yeah,
listed with somebody else, or for whatever reason, who have asked for my opinion. And what it tells me is they're nervous because they're not,
they're not getting it.
like, a month ago, they knew their home would have sold overnight, right,
Yeah.
for above asking, and now it's not. They're not even getting offers or activity, and they're having to adjust their price.
Mhm.
Which in reality, it's probably they're adjusting their price to where it should have been anyways, right? But everybody was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
they got X. I want X plus
Mhm.
5, right?" And then, "Oh, I want X plus 10," and that it was that plus
Keeps snowballing.
that got us
Yeah.
in trouble. Yeah,
So, in summary, the market is we're in a hot seller's market.
it's a hot seller's market still. Yeah,
So, if you're a buyer in today's market, you got to get out there, be prepared to see a lot of homes,
yeah,
and be in competition, write a
hmm,
winning offer. If you're a seller in today's market, while it may be enticing to overprice it because you see your neighbor getting
yeah,
more than they asked, let the competition of the buyers do the raise your price for you.
yeah,
Have a good agent on both sides because we will walk you through and
100%.
prepare you. Our
Yeah,
goal is to take the stress of home buying and selling off your shoulders.
absolutely. That's what we're here
We
for.
want to
Yeah,
provide a concierge service in real estate. So if you're a buyer, write that winning offer. Seller, let the buyers raise your price and
yeah.
let us handle the work for you guys on both ends. With that, thank you for your time today,
Thank
Pablo.
you.
It's been a pleasure doing this, and I hope
Awesome.
you, the audience, have a great rest of your day. Tune in next week for the next episode of the Real Estate Podcast. And as always, feel free to reach out on any of our avenues, our phone numbers, and emails, as well as our Instagrams will all be linked to this. And it'd be our pleasure to help you
Yeah.
guys with any of your real estate
And
concerns
listen,
or moves.
no obligation. If you guys just want to call and ask questions, I'll be more than happy to
Yeah.
answer on the phone or in person. If you guys want to come to our office, we'd love to have you. We got a great place here in Fashion Island. And we could sit down with you guys for 10, 15, 20 minutes,
Yep.
whatever you need to make you feel comfortable. Again, no obligation. Just give us a call and we'll set something up.
Yep. We just want to be your advisors.
Yep.
So you guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in. Bye bye.
Thank you.